Hey you guys, welcome back to Flickers of Fear. So hey, look, it's October, the most wonderful time of the year, and it occurred to me that probably I should start focusing on some more Halloween-specific media, in the lead up to Big Day, the best holiday of the year. So, so I'm trying to think because I was like, man, I think I've pretty much covered like all the good Halloween movies and some of the ones that are even not so great. But then I kept seeing recommendations for this movie that came out in 2023 called Dark Harvest. And I kept seeing it popping up on like various lists of like, best horror movies on Amazon Prime or whatever the fuck, like streaming service, or best Halloween adjacent movies that you haven't seen or something like that. So since it was actually on Amazon Prime, like you could watch it free if you have a subscription, I decided to give it a look because it sounded kind of good. Now, I didn't know this going in, but this movie was directed by David Slade. Now, if you don't know that name, he has actually directed some fantastic movies, including Hard Candy from 2005, which, if you haven't seen that, is great. 30 Days of Night from 2007. One segment of that anthology film that came out in 2018, which was called Nightmare Cinema, which was actually quite good. And he also did that cool, like, interactive Black Mirror episode, Bandersnatch. Yeah, so he directed that too. Now, in the interest of full disclosure, I also have to admit that he also directed one of the Twilight movies, Eclipse, that came out in 2010. But I'm not going to hold that against him because the rest of his output is like so awesome that it's like, well, he probably needed a paycheck, so what are you going to do? So this movie here, Dark Harvest, is based on a 2006 novel of the same name by Norman Partridge. Now, I haven't read it, but I did go and read the plot synopsis, and it seems like the movie, it's weird because like the Wikipedia page for this movie says that it's loosely based on the novel, but it's like when I read the plot synopsis of the novel, I'm like, I don't know, that sounds pretty similar to me. So it seems like it's pretty close to the original story. Now, this movie actually got a one night theatrical release, but only at Alamo Drafthouse theaters, and then went to VOD. Now, I'm glad it seems to have gotten some kind of small amount of appreciation on various horror sites because it's actually quite a good little movie. And it really kind of got me into that, autumnal, like Halloween-y kind of mood. Now, if I had to make comparisons or put this like in the ballpark of something, it has elements of Children of the Corn, maybe, like in the sense of being set in like a really small midwestern town with some folk horror type stuff going on. Pumpkinhead, like especially in the design of the monster. And even, this might be kind of out there, but like it kind of reminded me a little bit of The Lady in White because it's set in the early 1960s, like around Halloween time, so it gave me that like nostalgic kind of vibe. There are also a couple hints of like the Purge movies as well, like toward the end, which I'll kind of elaborate on a little bit later. But I mean, Dark Harvest kind of has a charm all its own, like in spite of its obvious influences. So the story is set in this unnamed, I don't think they ever name it. It's just like this dinky ass town in the Midwest that's just surrounded by dense cornfields, and there's obviously like nothing much going on. So at the start of the movie, it's 1962. And there's this annual ritual that's kind of the center of the narrative. And that's set up like right away, like in the first few minutes of the movie. So basically, this is how it is. Every year, there's a monster called Sawtooth Jack. And he's released from the cornfield to basically just like run amok on Halloween night. And by amok, I mean he can like kill people and stuff. Now, all the boys in town, girls are not allowed, are either forced and or encouraged, not entirely clear which one it is, to participate in something called the run. So they put masks on, kind of pick up whatever weapons they have at hand, and try to kill the monster before it gets to the town's church at midnight, like on Halloween night. Now, whoever kills the monster gets a big fat check. I think it's $25,000, which, holy shit, that was a lot of money in 1962. You get a nice new house for your family, like on the good side of town, on the right side of the tracks. And you get a flashy new car. Now, before the run, all the participating boys are locked in their bedrooms for like 3 days. No food, no water, no human interaction. And all the parents go along with this. This is to ensure that they will be quote unquote hungry, and I guess like extra pissed off when they go out to kill Sawtooth Jack because they've been like so pent up, you know what I mean? Now the monster, by the way, sort of looks like Pumpkinhead, as I mentioned, but has kind of a more humanoid body. He's a little bit bigger than a person, but not that much, but like taller than a person, but not that much bigger. Like, because Pumpkinhead was kind of more demony looking, but this kind of has a pumpkin-y head, but he kind of looks more like a human, and he wears pants kind of like a scarecrow type situation. Also, the monster's gut is stuffed with like candy and snacks and stuff before he's unleashed. So after one of the boys kills him at the annual ritual, the other boys like all just kind of dive in and eat all the candy and stuff after they've torn his stomach open. So it's almost like a piñata kind of type of situation. So in 1962, several boys are killed by Sawtooth Jack, which you're led to assume happens every year probably. And then Sawtooth Jack himself gets killed by kind of a popular teenager named Jim Shepard. So there's this big celebration, and there's a Halloween dance, which, like I said, it's implied they do this every year, to celebrate this successful kill. And it's implied, well, I don't even know if it's implied, but they even say, like, outright, that the fact that Sawtooth Jack was killed implies a good harvest. Because they do kind of make mention that one year Sawtooth Jack made it to the church and didn't get killed, and then, like, all kind of horrible shit happened. Like, their crops failed, and there was horrible weather, and all, like, I think there was, like, a big dust storm or something like that. So they're, like, it has to happen, like, every year. And then they'll have a good harvest. Now, so after that, like, Jim, the one who killed the monster, he gets his money, he hops in his new Corvette, and just, like, burns rubber out of town. Now, this isn't revealed until later, and this may be a little bit spoilery, so, feel free to, like, skip ahead a few seconds or go watch the movie and then come back or whatever. I'm not going to spoil the ending, but, I might spoil a couple plot points. No one is actually allowed to leave the town unless, ostensibly, they win the run. Then you're allowed to leave. So after all of that is established, the story jumps ahead a year to 1963. Now, Jim had a younger brother who was like a year or two younger, named Richie. And he's kind of still living in the shadow of his brother's win. You know what I mean? Like, his parents obviously think that Jim is awesome and the golden boy and the superior kid, and that Richie is kind of a loser. You know what I mean? Now, you're led to assume that because of this, Richie has kind of taken to being like a greaser. You know what I mean? Like, he sells like leather jackets, he slicks his hair back, he's hanging out with a gang of hoods who, frankly, are about as scary as the T-Birds from Grease. You know what I mean? But they're nice kids. Like, obviously, they're not hoodlums, really. They just break little laws every now and then, but it's no big deal. Now, he's also really upset that he barely hears from his brother, Jim, who is supposedly out seeing the world somewhere, right? Because he was allowed to leave. So the two of them were always really close growing up, but Richie feels like he's been abandoned. Like, he gets postcards every now and then from various places, but there's only a few words on them, like nothing substantive, and he's like, why doesn't he write me a letter? Like, why doesn't he, like, tell me what he's doing or anything like that? Like, it's not like him. So because of this anguish that he's going through, Richie decides he wants to prove himself worthy. So he tells his parents that he will be participating in this year's run. Now, this is technically against the rules. Like, once one boy wins, the other boys in that family are prohibited from participating going forward. I guess ostensibly so all the families, like, will get a fair chance, like, to win all the money and stuff like that. So Richie's parents absolutely forbid it. Like, you are not doing the run. I mean, not only because it's not allowed, but also because, obviously he might get killed. But Richie, being kind of a greaser and sort of like a rebel without a cause, he doesn't really give a shit about the rules, and he just insists that he's going to go through with it anyway. Oh, and by the way, Richie's parents, I knew I recognized them. His dad is played by Jeremy Davies, who was in Ravenous, which, holy crap, please see that if you haven't, from 1999. The House That Jack Built, The Black Phone, he's been in a bunch of stuff. And the mom is played by Elizabeth Reeser from The Haunting of Hill House, like the Mike Flanagan one. So I thought that was kind of a fun little fact. So there's a couple other things going on in Richie's life that aren't really helping his mental state any, right? Like, one of them is this jerkwad town cop. I guess he's like the sheriff or whatever. His name is like Officer Ricks. And he's always kind of riding Richie's ass for one thing or another. And he's really kind of a dick. And there's also kind of, the standard issue gaggle of bullies who are always kind of picking on him and giving him crap and beating him up and whatnot. There is one bright spot, though, in the form of the intriguing Kelly Haynes. She has recently moved to town. She moved in with her aunt after her parents died. And she seems to have the same kind of devil-may-care attitude that Richie has. And there's also rumors that she might be an arsonist. So there's that too. Now, here's the thing. She's black, and it's 1963. So you can imagine how well this burgeoning romance goes over. Yeah, like a fart in a spacesuit. But neither Richie nor Kelly obviously give much of a fuck what the rubes in this stupid town think and decide they're just going to do what they're going to do. So after all of the setup with the characters and the whole establishment of the town's dynamic and this annual ritual, like what the rules of it are and stuff, the movie starts kind of ramping up to Halloween night of 1963 and Richie's plans to participate in the run, and then, you know, you get to see like the whole thing. Now, I won't spoil the movie from here on out, but suffice it to say that once the big night arrives, there are lots and lots of gory kills. Sawtooth Jack basically comes out of that fucking cornfield and tears kids in half, rips the tops of their heads off. Like, at one point, he even goes into this kind of underground bunker thing where, like, a bunch of kids were hiding because they didn't want to do it. And he just kind of, like, kills them all. There's, like, a huge fucking blood fountain, like, coming out of there. So the carnage is actually, like, pretty fun. And it's not perpetrated entirely by the monster either, because the boys that are doing the run, as the night goes on, they go fucking Lord of the Flies, right? Like, so they start becoming like more and more unhinged as the night goes on because they're allowed to, like they're given kind of free reign. So they start killing other townspeople as well as each other. So that's kind of where the Purge comparisons like popped into my mind. You know what I mean? Because they're just allowed to like run rampant for one night. So yeah, like I said, this was a really solid Halloween horror film. It had a great premise, a great period setting. You don't really see a lot of them like set around this time period, so I thought that was pretty cool. Had kind of a grim twist to it, and sympathetic leads that you were really rooting for. I mean, Richie was like a really sympathetic character, as was Kelly, like his potential girlfriend. I also liked the kind of folk horror vibe of it. I will admit that the ending went into a direction I didn't expect. And again, this might be a little bit spoiler. The ending is kind of a bummer. But upon reflection, I kind of thought the ending was a lot more powerful than the one that I was maybe anticipating. So I can't be too mad at it. So yeah, if you've seen all the, you know, requisite Halloween movies and you're kind of looking for another one that has that sort of nostalgic fall vibe to it, bit of a folk horror kind of sensibility, and also has like a bunch of violence and gore and stuff like that, then I mean, this is a pretty good one to sort of add to your seasonal rotation. And I'm kind of glad that it was recommended because I don't know if I would have watched it otherwise because it's fairly new, you know what I mean? So that will do it for this Flickers of Fear. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, please like, share, subscribe, comment, and all of that other good stuff. And I'll see you guys again on the next one. Bye.